We at Gospel Chariot Missions have Gospel Chariot Missions. A couple of years ago, we started a thing called Gospel Care Missions, where we ship containers of clothing and Bibles over to the poor in Africa to work with Gospel Chariot Missions. And now I want to initiate and start a ministry called Gospel Share Missions. And this is about how we as a ministry and as a church, how can we move from addition to multiplication? How can we make disciples who make disciples? And not just church goers who go to church. They say that 97% of church goers, believers, have never shared their faith with anybody. And so I want to show you, and every week, every month, and in the coming years, I'll be sharing some information with you. And every week, Monday or Tuesday, I'll share a video with you. And today I'd like to just share something that has changed my life. And here it is. It's the 4 fields. For us to reach out, we've got to understand this diagram. And here it is, just a square with a circle in the middle, with a line there, a line there, a line there, a line there. It's 4 fields. And we need to understand, if we want to reach out, if we want to make disciples, if we want to sow the seed, we need to understand that the first field over there is an empty field. It's empty. The second field over here is the seeded field. The seeded field, that's where the gospel is shared. The third field is the growing field. The growing field. And the last field is the harvest field. So this is the empty field. And how do we enter that empty field? And of course the easiest way is in Luke 10 and 1 and following. You find your person of peace. You find your home of peace, and we'll explain that. And so it's empty. And we all have relational maps. You know, our neighbor, our friend, our mates. Oh, so many. And so we need to identify that relational map. We then start sowing the seed. And so we sow the seed. And so we'll learn in the coming weeks and months and years how to share the gospel. As I said, 97% of people don't, who are believers. How do we share it? That's the seeded field. That's the gospel. The growing field. And so as people come to the Lord and the seed is sown, it starts to grow. Oh yes. And so we need to help that seed grow. A farmer goes out, he sows the seed, he needs to assist it. Make sure there's water, sunlight, and that seed starts to grow. And that's the growing seed, and that is discipleship. Discipleship. How do we take those young babes and let them grow? And the last field is the harvest field. Yeah, we bundle it up. We help that harvest right over there. We get those who are children of God and we help them gather, just like a harvester gathers the harvest together. And that's the church. And right in the middle over here, whether it's the empty field, the seeded field, the growing field, the harvest field, you need leaders. Oh yes. You need good leaders. Leaders who understand that there are empty fields around them. Yes, leaders who understand that their flock, their church, their members need to be sowing the gospel. It's all of our responsibility. And leaders need to understand and help those young Christians, that seed grow, and ultimately help that church be a biblical church, a sound church. And so there are 20 tools in the coming weeks and coming months that I'll be sharing with you. It's so important. You know what's happening today? In Ephesians 4 and verse 11, the Bible speaks about And it was he who gave some to be apostles, prophets, and evangelists. And they really look after this over here, the apostles, prophets, and evangelists, the apes. Empty field and seeded field. Yes, the evangelists. Wonderful, beautiful. Then it goes on, and he also gave some to be pastors and teachers. And today, they look after that, the church. And also identify the empty field. But here's the problem. We're not looking after discipleship. There's nothing going on over here. We're not making disciples. And so in the coming weeks, I'll share with you, how do we enter an empty field? How do we identify these homes of peace, these spaces, these places, these areas around us that are empty, that is ripe unto harvest? Number two, in the coming weeks and months and years, how do you share the gospel? Know your story. Know Jesus' story. Share it. Number three, how do we help those grow? And how do we make disciples who make disciples? Remember Paul, 2 Timothy 2 and verse 2, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable men who will also be qualified to teach others. 4 generations. It was Paul, it was Timothy, it was reliable men and others. Yes. How do we, and we'll have some tools on how to mature those young Christians. And number 4, how do we gather as a biblical church? A biblical church. And how do we have sound leaders? God bless you. Next week I'll be back on how to enter the empty field. Remember, so this week you go home, you get your brother, you get your family, you get your buddy, and you share this 4 fields. See if you can draw it. Okay? It's just a square, a circle in the middle, zip, 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 zip. 4 fields. The entry field, the gospel, which is the seeded field, the growing field, which is discipleship, and the harvest field. And when we can identify that, we will then understand where we are and what's our next step. But if we do this right, in the coming years, you will reach thousands and thousands for Jesus. Jesus did it. The apostles did it. Why can't we do it? God bless you.